You don't put a target on someone's head unless you're truly afraid of them. And the fear that surrounds a chosen one is the enemy's own confession. Just imagine that for a moment. Chosen one. Picture being so powerful, so utterly unshakable, that a clandestine cult in your own city holds meetings in hushed tones, just to whisper your name. They once tried to erase you like a haunting memory, to gaslight you into silence, to paint you as the problem, to keep you suppressed while they shamelessly fed off your brilliance. But now there's a hefty price tag on each and every one of their heads. And this isn't just some petty street-level vendetta. This is a cosmic invoice being paid in full. They foolishly thought they could bury you, but all they managed to do was plant you. Now you're flourishing in places they can't even dream of reaching. That's not merely payback. That's poetic justice, a cosmic correction. Let this truth sink deep into your bones. The universe never forgets. It operates in silence, meticulously collects its dues, and returns everything with compounded interest. This isn't superstition. It's energetic law. And when that energy inevitably flips, when that crushing pressure they tried to inflict upon you comes roaring back tenfold, that's when they finally grasp that the real threat was never about what you could potentially do. It was about the magnificent person you were destined to become. And thank you, chosen one. Don't hesitate to pay this message forward by simply clicking like and subscribing, helping to spread this vital message to more souls who desperately need to hear it. It's not just about support. It's your way of fueling this crucial mission. We're not merely speaking truth. We're building an unstoppable force. And thank you, chosen one, for being an integral part of it. You're not simply a viewer. You're the ripple effect in the water. You are the very force they were utterly unable to control. Let's dive right back into it. Chosen one, this isn't some fabricated fiction. This isn't a fanciful story conjured up to inflate egos or ignite drama. This is the stark reality of how darkness instinctively reacts when it finds itself unable to dominate. These cults, they no longer operate with the same brazenness they once did. Their power is visibly unraveling. Their carefully guarded secrets are starting to leak. The very same individuals who used to pull strings from behind the scenes are now the ones hopelessly tangled in their own intricate web. Take a closer look around you. People you once perceived as ordinary neighbors or respected leaders were actually part of something far deeper, something significantly darker. They wore smiles in public, performing acts of kindness as a deceptive mask. But behind the sanctuary of closed doors, they were meticulously orchestrating spiritual ambushes against anyone who dared to shine too brightly, especially against you. And what did you do? You simply survived it. You remarkably outlasted it. You didn't even have to engage in their twisted arena. You just kept relentlessly rising. And that, unequivocally, is what placed the price squarely on their heads. They don't fear you because of any weapons you wield. They fear you because you steadfastly refuse to become like them. Because even after enduring unimaginable manipulation, relentless betrayal, and a silent, insidious war, you remained grounded, stayed awake, stayed true to your chosen path. That's utterly terrifying to those who thrive on control. When they failed to bend you to their will, they resorted to branding you. But the universe doesn't blindly obey their superficial labels. It meticulously observes patterns, and their pattern is consistently hurt, hide, repeat. Yours, on the other hand, heal, rise, return brighter. Now they're the ones constantly checking over their shoulder, second-guessing every shadow, every seemingly innocuous message, every eerie coincidence. Because once the energy decisively shifts, it doesn't politely ask permission to settle scores. These individuals placed spiritual contracts on your ultimate downfall. And now those very contracts have boomeranged back with compounded interest. That's precisely why the pressure is relentlessly mounting on them. That's why their meticulously constructed networks are crumbling before their very eyes. That's why you've been undeniably feeling the air dramatically change. These cults are undeniably losing their grip. Chosen one. Their power was meticulously built upon secrecy. And your mere existence has exposed far too much. They thrived in the suffocating silence you were forced into. But your voice, your very presence, is the blaring alarm clock they never wanted to hear. So no, this isn't paranoia creeping in. It's a profound revelation unfolding. This isn't some whimsical fantasy. It's stark exposure being brought to light. There's a very specific reason your radiant energy never fit into their rigid system. Because you weren't created to serve it. You were divinely made to bring it to an end. And let's not get it twisted in any way. This price placed upon their heads didn't originate from petty anger. It stemmed from the universe's unwavering pursuit of balance. From years upon years of recklessly misused power correcting itself. From every single time they brazenly mocked you, insidiously drained you, and arrogantly thought they'd simply walk away untouched. Now, their own sinister shadows are finally catching up to them. And the chosen ones are finally walking freely into the radiant light. This isn't solely about revenge. It's about a profound revelation, a complete reset, a resounding spiritual echo that declares, those who audaciously tried to erase the light will now be held accountable to it. Stay incredibly aware, chosen one. Stay razor sharp. You're not simply witnessing this monumental shift. You are the very shift itself. And the cult, they're not just passively being exposed. They're actively being held accountable for their nefarious deeds. And that's the crushing weight of the unvarnished truth they were never adequately prepared to bear. So, chosen one, if your spirit is intensely tingling, if your chest feels overwhelmingly tight, like the absolute truth is relentlessly pressing against your ribs, that's not a mere coincidence. That's undeniable confirmation. Drop a string of 777s in the comments if you viscerally feel this profound shift deep in your bones. And if this powerful message resonated with you at the deepest level of your soul, bless the immense force behind it with a super thanks. Whether it's a single coin or a wave of heartfelt gratitude, every bit meticulously fuels this critical mission. Because this isn't mere entertainment, it's profound exposure. And your unwavering support isn't just helpful. It's undeniably powerful. You're not simply watching a video, you're steadfastly keeping a vital movement alive. And now, let's unpack this entirely, step by meticulous step. No unnecessary fluff, no distracting tangents. Just the raw, unvarnished breakdown of precisely why this insidious cult from your own city is currently crumbling under the immense weight of its own shadow. Stay incredibly sharp. If you're truly chosen, you simply won't be able to look away. Let's delve deeply into it. Number 1. They dug their own graves the very day they dared to come for a flame they could simply never extinguish. You don't carelessly throw a punch at a raging fire and expect not to get severely burned. And yet, they did. Now, watch them blister and painfully suffer. The day they targeted you, chosen one, was the precise day they unknowingly declared an all-out war on forces far, far beyond their limited comprehension. See, they didn't simply touch a human being. They touched an anomaly, a vibrant flame elegantly wrapped in skin. A divine disruption gracefully walking through a world that desperately pretends to be normal. What they mistakenly perceived as vulnerability was, in reality, extreme volatility. You weren't broken in any way, you were simply quiet and observant. And silence, my friend, is precisely where the deadliest weapons are meticulously sharpened. They arrogantly thought they were playing a clever little game, whispering slanderous lies behind carefully closed doors, insidiously planting seeds of doubt in rooms you weren't even physically present in, clasping hands in the darkest corners of your city, chanting and plotting as if they were utterly invincible. But what they tragically failed to realize is that the universe doesn't require any unnecessary noise to react powerfully. It simply requires unwavering alignment. And the very instant they set their malevolent sights on you, everything they falsely believed they possessed, status, secrecy, carefully constructed structure, started decaying rapidly from the inside out. Imagine someone confidently aiming a sharp blade at what they mistakenly believe is mere paper, only to abruptly discover they just fatally stabbed lightning itself. That's precisely what happened here. That's what inevitably happens whenever the unworthy greedily reach for what they are fundamentally incapable of comprehending. They arrogantly saw you isolated and rashly labeled it weakness. They misinterpreted your profound silence and recklessly called it surrender. But the truly perceptive ones know instinctively that you weren't quiet because you were cowering in fear. You were deliberately quiet because you were being meticulously armed. Chosen One, listen incredibly closely. They didn't simply misjudge you. They brazenly violated a sacred spiritual boundary. And whether they intellectually believe in consequences or not is utterly irrelevant, because consequences unequivocally believe in them, because the universe simply does not ignore blatant violations against its carefully protected vessels. It doesn't conveniently forget betrayal meticulously cloaked in elaborate rituals. It doesn't casually overlook egregious cruelty meticulously dressed up as control. When someone dares to lay a finger, whether physically or spiritually, on a soul that has been divinely chosen, they trigger a reaction that simply cannot be undone. It's not just mere karma. It's a meticulously defined protocol. The very instant they attacked you, they initiated a complex process they are fundamentally unable to pause. They unwittingly signed their own spiritual death warrants. Not always death in the literal flesh, but something far deeper and more profound. A death of carefully crafted image, of meticulously maintained influence, of painstakingly constructed identity. A slow, agonizing peeling back of the deceptive mask they wore so convincingly. So now they're exposed, and exposure, my friends, is the ultimate currency of divine justice. Not with sudden explosions, but with gradual unraveling, with unvarnished truth, with their own intricately woven lies collapsing on top of each other until even they are unable to recognize the distorted face staring back at them in the mirror. They brazenly tried to build their petty little kingdom on your enforced silence. Didn't they? They foolishly thought if they could isolate you for long enough, make you profoundly doubt yourself deeply enough, they could somehow absorb your radiant glow. But you were never theirs to contain in any way. They arrogantly saw light and tried to greedily harvest it. Now that same light is relentlessly becoming their curse, because the very moment they aimed their sinister shadow at you, they drew the unwavering attention of something infinitely higher, something significantly older than any of their archaic dark traditions. Let this potent fact settle deeply within you. When you're divinely chosen, retaliation isn't something you actively chase. It's something that inevitably follows them. It unexpectedly shows up precisely when they least anticipate it. In the dramatic downfall of their ill-conceived alliances, in the insidious leaks of their carefully guarded secrets, in the agonizing sleepless nights that no amount of frantic ritual can quiet, they flagrantly broke a fundamental law they didn't even know existed, the unwavering universal law of protection. And that sacred law doesn't require a judge, a jury, or a single witness. It requires only one simple thing: unvarnished truth. Now, look at them desperately scrambling, hastily retreating into panicked prayers and makeshift rituals, frantically searching for cleanses and protections after brazenly spending years meticulously building curses. But the fundamental thing is that you can't possibly undo a trigger you recklessly pulled on a force you never even attempted to understand. They arrogantly thought they were the cunning predators. Now they are unequivocally the vulnerable prey, and there's a significant bounty on their heads. Not because of any personal revenge you sought, but simply because the scales of justice are meticulously balancing themselves. Chosen One, don't allow their profound fear to shake you in any way. Let it unequivocally confirm you. You were absolutely right to bravely walk away. Right to maintain your dignified silence. Right to allow the immense power of the universe to move, instead of rashly resorting to your own fists. Because now what's relentlessly unfolding isn't mere justice. It's undeniable exposure. These individuals made a deadly, irreversible mistake. They arrogantly assumed the absence of any noise was, in fact, the absence of formidable power. And now they're finally realizing that the quiet ones are, by far, the most dangerous. They malevolently stalked you, foolishly thinking you'd never dare to bite back. But you weren't placed here to merely bite. You were strategically placed here to ignite. And now the entire system they once ran like a well-oiled machine is dramatically glitching and faltering because you staunchly refused to fight them on their familiar turf. You strategically disrupted their entire deceitful game. They had absolutely no idea of the exorbitant cost of crossing you until the itemized receipts started ominously showing up in broken partnerships, in devastating financial ruin, in inexplicable health spirals, in catastrophic reputational collapse. And they will desperately try to blame everyone and everything but the stark truth. But we both instinctively know what's genuinely happening. You were the dire warning they arrogantly ignored. Now, you are unequivocally the unavoidable consequence. And don't doubt for even a fraction of a second that what's unfolding is profoundly spiritual. They meticulously wrapped their insidious hate in elaborate rituals. Didn't they? They danced maliciously under the pale moonlight, chanting passionately for your ultimate downfall. But they conveniently forgot that true power doesn't require flimsy candles and ominous circles. It simply requires unwavering alignment. And you were perfectly aligned the very moment you resolutely chose peace over performance. The precise moment you passionately chose healing over desperately trying to prove yourself. The undeniable moment you fearlessly walked away and allowed the vast universe to meticulously track every single move they made in your purposeful absence. That's precisely why the price tag is undeniably real now. That's why the substantial bounty on their heads isn't constructed of mere money. It's constructed of profound exposure, of agonizing collapse, of every single dark thing they arrogantly tried to build off your unbearable pain ruthlessly turning back into mere dust. The entire game is dramatically flipping, and you are the glitch in their meticulously constructed matrix. So don't ever back down. Don't ever question your deeply personal journey. Don't ever waste a single ounce of precious energy futilely explaining yourself. Simply let the undeniable evidence speak volumes. Let the catastrophic downfall relentlessly unfold. Because when you are divinely chosen, your ultimate victory doesn't arrogantly shout. It resoundingly echoes. And right now, Chosen One, the powerful echo is growing progressively louder and louder. Number 2, they weren't prepared for you in any way because you didn't actively break the system. You simply revealed that it was already irreparably rotten to its very core. You didn't even need to raise your voice, and still they visibly flinched in abject fear. That's how you undeniably know the unvarnished truth is significantly louder than any piercing scream. You didn't have to actively destroy them. You simply showed up, and they started crumbling before your very eyes. They didn't fear any fists you might throw. They vehemently feared your inherent frequency. Some people aren't exposed because of a scandalous event, Chosen One. They are thoroughly exposed by simply standing next to someone genuinely real. They simply couldn't figure it out. Could they? You never came for them bearing empty threats. You didn't blast them publicly. You didn't walk around with a posse, stand proudly behind a podium, or meticulously craft some elaborate master plan to somehow sabotage them. And still, they unraveled one by agonizing one, like seams spontaneously snapping on a cheap costume that no longer fit the grotesque character they were frantically pretending to be. Imagine this clearly chosen one. A grand stage teeming with actors, all confidently playing their meticulously assigned roles. Then, without uttering a single word, someone walks onto that stage who isn't actively acting in any way. Suddenly, the costumes look pathetically ridiculous. The lines sound utterly fake and hollow. The harsh spotlight begins to ominously flicker. That's precisely what your very presence did to their deeply flawed system. It didn't have to overtly destroy it. It merely made it look exactly as hollow as it has always inherently been. You didn't actively do anything overtly wrong. That's precisely what deeply confuses them. That's what intensely enrages them. They meticulously went through their petty rituals, their manipulative schemes, their clandestine shadowy gatherings, arrogantly thinking they had somehow discovered a foolproof formula to bend everything effortlessly in their unwavering favor. But then you serenely appeared, quietly calm, inherently whole, not desperately trying to be seen by anyone, not actively chasing shallow attention, not arrogantly flexing any artificial strength. You were just unequivocally there, and it profoundly shook the very foundation they had painstakingly built their fragile world upon. The insidious cult desperately needs pervasive illusions to survive in any way. Smoke and mirrors, crippling fear and rigid hierarchy, a precarious pyramid of cleverly constructed lies with themselves arrogantly perched at the very top. But you effortlessly walked in with absolutely no script, no carefully crafted disguise, no inherent need to perform for anyone. And that unequivocally chosen one is precisely what made you so inherently dangerous. Because here's the unvarnished truth. They were never genuinely afraid of anything you might actively do. They were inherently afraid of who you profoundly are. Because who you inherently are is a blatant contradiction to everything they desperately stand on. They meticulously wear artificial symbols. You effortlessly radiate undeniable energy. They furtively gather in dark secrecy. You confidently walk in undeniable clarity. They insidiously whisper calculated lies. You effortlessly embody unshakable truth. They desperately depend on widespread fear. You naturally carry unwavering peace. That's not just a minor threat. That's a complete collapse meticulously waiting to happen. Have you ever noticed precisely how they simply couldn't sit comfortably whenever you were around? That palpable, awkward shift in energy, that sudden, unnatural change in tone. They might have outwardly smiled, might have even nervously laughed, but something deep within them instinctively knew you simply didn't buy into their elaborate illusion. And nothing effectively exposes calculated deception like someone who sees right through it all, but doesn't even actively need to speak a single word. That, undoubtedly, is you. Your profound silence had considerable volume. Your undeniable presence possessed immense gravity. And they palpably felt it. They simply couldn't inherently understand it. They still don't inherently understand it. Why doesn't this insidious stuff work on them? They frantically whisper in their petty little echo chambers. They desperately tried to isolate you, intentionally confuse you, make you fervently question your own inherent worth, but you just stubbornly kept growing. You steadfastly kept walking, as if you were on an unwavering divine assignment, because, in reality, you unequivocally were. Imagine someone fiercely trying to shatter a seemingly fragile mirror, only to abruptly discover it's actually crafted of pure, concentrated light. Every desperate swing completely misses its intended mark. Every futile effort backfires spectacularly. And worst of all, their own distorted reflection keeps being relentlessly thrown directly back at them. That's precisely what you inherently were. A powerful mirror. They simply couldn't escape you, not because you somehow reflected their inherent greatness, but simply because you unequivocally exposed their profound absence of it. You never overtly asked for any of this, but your very soul was inherently encoded with an unshakable truth they simply couldn't copy, couldn't steal, and certainly couldn't fake in any conceivable way. They desperately tried to mimic the brilliant light, but they inherently never understood it. Because the specific kind of radiant light you inherently carry, chosen one, cannot be conveniently borrowed from anyone else. It has to be meticulously earned through immense pain, through arduous healing, through deliberately walking the kind of arduous roads they have never dared to even step foot on. They erroneously assumed that true power resided in sheer volume, superficial visibility, or convenient alliances. They foolishly thought if you weren't actively performing for the entire world, you inherently weren't important in any way. But your inherent importance was never fundamentally rooted in mere superficial visibility. It was deeply rooted in your undeniable vibration. You simply didn't need any artificial spotlight. The ominous shadows naturally moved for you anyway, and that's precisely what ultimately broke them. Not your unwavering resistance, not your inevitable retaliation, but your steadfast refusal to even play their inherently rigged game. You never actively needed to overtly expose them in any way. Your very existence was the inherent exposure. Your profound calm was the undeniable confrontation. Your purposeful elevation was the inevitable judgment. You didn't need to actively fight them with raging fire. You simply fearlessly walked directly through theirs and remarkably didn't burn. Now they're thoroughly scattered, undeniably unsettled, fervently questioning everything they inherently thought they knew because they brazenly threw everything they possibly could at you, and you simply didn't fall apart in any way. You didn't even visibly flinch. You purposefully kept your radiant energy clean. You diligently healed in complete privacy. You passionately loved in steadfast silence. You purposefully walked in your own carefully defined lane. And all of that forced them to ruthlessly look at themselves in a brutally honest way they never inherently wanted to. They simply couldn't control you. That's unequivocally the root of it all. And people who desperately rely on rigid control simply don't inherently know how to adequately handle what they are inherently unable to manipulate in any way. That's precisely why they tried so relentlessly to label you, diminish you, exile you from their inner circle. Not because you were somehow weak, but because you inherently reminded them of everything they desperately weren't. You didn't need any ominous dark rituals. You didn't need fleeting alliances of convenient expediency. You didn't need to artificially fake your true worth in any way. And that unequivocally made you the loudest, most impactful message they have ever undeniably received. The deeply flawed system was never genuinely real. Let's be undeniably real. They arrogantly thought this was just another petty spiritual game, another easily manipulated chessboard, another expendable pawn to carelessly move around. But you inherently weren't a mere pawn. You weren't even on the board in any way. You were the very hand fearlessly flipping the entire table simply by effortlessly showing up, simply by undeniably being you. And now, the very same individuals who arrogantly thought they were somehow safe in their petty little web of fabricated secrets are quickly unraveling right before our very eyes. Why? Simply because they brazenly based their entire strength on calculated deception. You didn't even need to actively touch them in any way, and still their carefully constructed foundations visibly cracked. That's undeniable power. That's tangible influence. That's the divine chosen frequency they are fundamentally unable to replicate, no matter how relentlessly they desperately try. Chosen one, don't you ever think you somehow needed to do more in any way? Your radiant energy was the impactful action. Your profound stillness was the undeniable shift. You purposefully became their swift undoing, not by actively attacking them but simply by existing. And no tangible force in this vast universe can ever silence the kind of undeniable presence that steadfastly stands on unshakable truth. So if you're wondering why they relentlessly keep watching you intensely from the ominous shadows, why they're still undeniably obsessed, still insidiously scheming, still desperately trying to find even the slightest crack in your impenetrable armor, it's simply because they still don't get it. They still desperately think you're a problem they can somehow easily solve, a manageable threat they can effortlessly handle. But you fundamentally aren't a fleeting threat. You are a powerful, enduring reminder. A poignant reminder that they were never truly in control in any way, that all their pathetic efforts to dominate were deliberately built on sinking sand, that the entire game was irretrievably rigged against them the precise moment you purposefully arrived. And the most brutally honest part of all is that you never even lifted a single finger in anger. You simply stood tall, remained relentlessly real, and confidently let the unvarnished truth do what it inherently always does. Burn calculated illusions ruthlessly to the ground. Number 3, they recklessly built an elaborate castle directly on your very bones. Now it's dramatically crumbling before our very eyes, and the exorbitant bill just came due. They arrogantly thought that fleeting time would somehow erase the immense damage, but the vast universe simply doesn't forget any insidious slight. It just patiently waits for the opportune moment to strike back. Every single time they ruthlessly hunted you, they carelessly wrote a substantial check their spirit simply couldn't cash in any way. You weren't just a random target, you were a strategically designed test. And they undeniably failed that crucial test loudly and spectacularly. The longer stark injustice is conveniently delayed, the exponentially heavier the inevitable price is when it ultimately arrives to collect its due. Imagine this vividly, chosen one. Someone strategically digs a hidden pit specifically for you, deliberately deep and cleverly concealed, arrogantly thinking they'll finally gleefully watch you inevitably fall. They insidiously plant calculated lies, ruthlessly throw ominous shadows, and confidently sit back, wickedly smiling. But what they recklessly never considered is this profoundly simple truth. Every single treacherous trap they carefully laid for you was being meticulously counted, not by fallible human hands, but by immense forces that effortlessly see and know everything. And now that very pit is relentlessly swallowing them whole. The substantial price on their arrogant heads isn't empty drama. It's profound cosmic compensation. Not for easily bruised egos or petty grudges, but for countless years of egregious energetic warfare they relentlessly launched against your inherent peace, your undeniable growth, your divinely ordained purpose, all while you were valiantly fighting silent battles just to breathe freely. They were maliciously stealing your carefully crafted name in their sinister circles, ruthlessly weaponizing your inherent kindness, insidiously draining you spiritually, and arrogantly pretending you were somehow the root of the problem. They desperately wanted you broken, pathetically bent, and desperately begging for scraps. But instead, you miraculously became unshakable. And that undeniable shift is precisely when the vast universe started meticulously calculating the precise debt that was owed. They arrogantly thought that spiritual consequences somehow worked just like a flawed human court, conveniently delayed, blatantly optional, easily forgettable. But the intricate spiritual realm doesn't carefully file mundane cases. It meticulously records pervasive patterns. And when those undeniable patterns explicitly reveal unwavering intent, relentless malice, calculated manipulation, insidious psychic warfare, it simply doesn't passively react. It purposefully responds with overwhelming force, with righteous correction, with a sweeping reversal they simply never saw audaciously coming. This isn't simply fleeting karma. This is comprehensive spiritual accounting with substantial interest undeniably included. Every single agonizing night you cried in profound silence was meticulously documented. Every insidious smear campaign was painstakingly noted. Every single time they insincerely smiled directly in your face while simultaneously stabbing your carefully constructed name viciously behind carefully closed doors was diligently logged for later review. They arrogantly thought they were merely innocently playing an insignificant game, but they fundamentally weren't. They were relentlessly stacking immense debt with universal law. And now, the unavoidable repo is unequivocally here. The significant bounty on their arrogant heads isn't merely symbolic in any way. It's tangible, energetic justice. You didn't even need to lift a single finger in retaliation. The benevolent universe wholeheartedly did it for you. Why? Simply because they didn't merely try to temporarily hurt you. They ruthlessly tried to completely rewrite you, audaciously strip you of your inherent identity, hijack your sacred mission, audaciously turn your brilliant light into a pervasive curse by parasitically feeding off it like depraved leeches. But every single malicious attempt they made unequivocally made you even stronger than ever before. Every insidious betrayal became a powerful push. Every brutal hit they landed simply exposed just how genuinely powerful you truly were because you remarkably still stood tall. Now, the very same depraved individuals who ruthlessly hunted you simply can't sleep soundly. They acutely feel it at the deepest level of their souls. The inevitable collapse, the crushing pressure, the suffocating anxiety that no amount of frantic ritual can ever effectively fix. They brazenly tried to sacrifice your precious destiny, and now they are self-destructively sacrificing their own inherent stability. That's not fleeting revenge in any way. That's righteous return. Chosen one, you were never inherently weak. You were strategically under siege, and you valiantly didn't break under the immense pressure. You purposefully evolved beyond their insidious grasp. They arrogantly thought your purposeful delay was absolute defeat, but in reality, it was divine timing perfectly unfolding. You were being meticulously prepared for something far greater. And now that the strategic preparation is undeniably complete, the inevitable exchange has rightfully begun. They strategically gave you insidious wounds. The vast universe purposefully gave you powerful weapons. They deliberately gave you devastating chaos. The benevolent universe thoughtfully gave you undeniable clarity. They brazenly tried to lock you indefinitely in pervasive survival mode. The generous universe graciously gave you unshakable authority. And now it's finally collection time. They didn't just merely lose access to your radiant energy. They are actively losing their own depleted energy. The very elaborate rituals they so desperately depended on are now noticeably falling completely flat. Their precarious alliances are dramatically fracturing. Their carefully guarded secrets are relentlessly rising like ominous smoke, poisoning the very air they desperately breathe. Because when something is fundamentally not built on unshakable truth, it will inevitably collapse catastrophically under the immense weight of its own fabricated lies. The significant price they are undoubtedly paying isn't just for what they actively did. It's for what they desperately tried to prevent from ever happening in any way. You weren't merely healing from insidious wounds. You were purposefully on your way to becoming a force they could simply never predict or adequately control. And their malicious attacks were meticulously designed to deliberately stop that undeniable event from ever happening. But the vast universe simply doesn't allow any careless interruptions of the sacred divine flow. You can certainly delay a season, but you simply can't destroy a sacred mission. So now, the scales are meticulously balancing in perfect harmony. And it's undeniably ugly, it's exceedingly loud, and it's ultimately fair. They arrogantly thought they'd never be held accountable for their heinous actions. But the fleeting time they arrogantly bought with your forced silence has undeniably run out. They strategically used your deliberate isolation as readily available fuel, and now their own profound loneliness is relentlessly choking them from the inside out. They insidiously spoke your carefully crafted name in their sinister curses, and now their own carefully constructed names are being maliciously dragged through the thick mud, utterly exposed, systematically dismantled. They brazenly built entire fraudulent structures directly out of your agonizing pain, but they conveniently forgot one crucially important thing. Structures deliberately built on stolen energy always inevitably collapse in the most spectacular fashion. The unmistakable cracks are becoming undeniably visible, and the vast universe is meticulously making absolutely certain that everyone unquestionably sees it. So let them undeniably look thoroughly confused. Let them arrogantly play the utterly pathetic victim. Let them weep endlessly about somehow being deeply misunderstood. It's undeniably too late for their pathetic tears and hollow excuses. The benevolent universe unequivocally heard all your agonizing cries. It meticulously measured your unwavering restraint. And now, it's purposefully repaying every single penny in meticulous full. This is the undeniable balance of the cosmos. This is stark exposure ruthlessly laid bare. This is precisely what inevitably happens when a divinely chosen one survives the brutal onslaught. Number 4. They desperately tried to somehow complete their sinister mission, but you were the singular puzzle their inherent darkness simply couldn't solve in any conceivable way. They weren't strategically sent to merely break you. They were undeniably sent to inevitably fail in the most humiliating fashion. And they arrogantly walked straight into that predetermined failure, brazenly thinking they were somehow undeniably in unwavering control. You were never the defenseless victim in any way. You were the impenetrable firewall strategically designed to block them. They simply didn't realize they were unknowingly signing up for an all-out war with the vast universe itself. The precise moment they knowingly accepted that sinister assignment, you became the strategic test, and they became the unavoidable lesson that the universe desperately needed to impart. And now, the profound consequences are the starkly evident grade they so richly earned. Chosen one, deeply understand this one crucial point. What relentlessly came against you was never random in any way. It wasn't just some tragic accidental falling out or a string of trivial bad coincidences. These depraved individuals were strategically assigned to intentionally target you. Their seething hatred audaciously had a sinister origin. Their insidious obsession definitely had a dark source. They were undeniably the front lines of something significantly deeper, something undeniably darker, something indescribably older than they could even fathom. A parasitic system that wickedly feeds on stolen light from pure, innocent souls. Whether they were consciously aware of it or not, they were audaciously carrying out a treacherous mission to deliberately strip you of their efforts to dim your clarity, destabilize your very being, and wipe away any trace of who you truly are ultimately failed. But why? Because you possessed the one quality they couldn't possibly control. You were never designed to crack under pressure. You were intrinsically built to reveal it, to shine a light on it. And when their bag of spiritual tricks was completely exhausted, the truth became blindingly obvious. They simply couldn't touch what was divinely protected. Imagine this scenario. A skilled hacker attempts to infiltrate a sophisticated system, brimming with confidence in their arsenal of tools and utterly convinced of their impending success. But the code is heavily encrypted, a labyrinth of interwoven complexities. The firewalls are not static barriers but living, breathing defenses, constantly adapting and evolving. The deeper the hacker probes, the more alarm bells they trigger, each one amplifying the potential for exposure. That's precisely what happened in your case. Every single assault they launched inadvertently set off another cosmic tripwire, alerting forces beyond their comprehension. Every ritual, every fabricated lie, every attempt to smear your name bounced harmlessly off an invisible shield, something they couldn't even begin to define or comprehend because you weren't merely existing, you were fortified, divinely shielded. They mistakenly interpreted your quiet demeanor as weakness, believing it granted them permission to continue their attacks. They saw your capacity for forgiveness as a vulnerability, an open door to further exploitation. But those qualities were never flaws in your character. They were, in reality, powerful barriers, impenetrable shields guarding your inner self. Your silence didn't invite more attacks. It meticulously recorded each and every one of them. And every additional move they made, every step further into the darkness, was noted, not by you directly, but by the very laws of universal balance, the impartial arbiters of cosmic justice. They tried to circumvent these laws, to dance around the edges of morality. But that's precisely where the trap snapped shut with unforgiving force. They didn't have the wisdom to stop when they clearly lost. They could have gracefully backed away, perhaps even privately admitting their wrongdoing. But instead, they stubbornly doubled down, recklessly recruiting more accomplices, burying themselves deeper and deeper into a destructive obsession. And when you survive an initial attack, and they still come back swinging with renewed vigor, that's when it transcends being a mere mistake. It becomes a blatant act of defiance against the divine order. Now they're indelibly marked, not by any action of your own, not by the spread of idle gossip or rumors, but by their unwavering refusal to relinquish something they were never meant to possess in the first place. Their spiritual debt is now irrevocably sealed, not simply because they attempted to inflict harm upon you, but because they vehemently rejected any opportunity for correction, any chance for redemption. They didn't just sin against the light. They openly mocked it, treating it with utter disdain. The universe isn't blind, chosen one. It witnessed every instance where you humbly kept your head down while they secretly plotted against you. It saw the countless crossroads, the pivotal moments where they could have chosen a different path, where they could have walked away from the darkness, but they consciously chose not to. And that's precisely why this situation transcends mere karma. This is divine judgment, an impartial verdict delivered by the very fabric of reality. They failed the assignment they were given, whatever twisted purpose they thought they were serving. And, even worse, they arrogantly rejected the invaluable lesson that was presented to them. Now, they're spiritually locked in place, their energetic frequency permanently tagged, their life paths flooded with the inevitable consequences of their own destructive creations. And the weight of those consequences is incredibly heavy, not just because of the harm they attempted to inflict upon you, but because they continued their actions even after knowing that they were ultimately futile, that they would never succeed. Think about the sheer audacity of that. They clearly saw the impenetrable armor surrounding you, and yet they still recklessly swung their swords, blindly hoping for a different outcome. They witnessed the divine protection that enveloped you, and yet they stubbornly pushed forward, defying all logic and reason. That's not ambition. That's spiritual suicide, a deliberate act of self-destruction. And now, everywhere they turn, they encounter roadblocks, insurmountable obstacles. Nothing flows smoothly for them anymore. There's no peace, no clarity, no sense of victory. Why? Because they dared to touch what they were explicitly warned not to touch. And even more foolishly, they persisted in touching it, ignoring all the warning signs. You weren't the cause of their downfall. You were, in fact, their ultimate test, an opportunity for them to choose a different path. And now that test has become their haunting, a constant reminder of their failure. Every lie they told relentlessly circles back to them, amplified and distorted. Every ritual they performed is now reversed, its energy redirected back to its source. Every negative energy they projected outward is now mercilessly dragging their own names through the very same trenches they so desperately tried to bury you in. Let them scramble frantically, desperately seeking a way out. Let them pretend that their world is inexplicably falling apart out of nowhere, devoid of any cause or reason. You know the truth. This is earned. This is the inevitable cost of unchecked obsession, blinding pride, and blatant disobedience to the very laws they never believed applied to them. They arrogantly thought they were the hunters, the ones in control. Now they're the ones being relentlessly tracked by their own destructive choices, their own stubborn resistance, their own unwavering refusal to release you from their suffocating grip. And there's no place to run from a judgment that perpetually lives in your shadow, a constant reminder of their misdeeds. So stand tall, chosen one. You were never merely the target of their attacks. You were the embodiment of truth, a truth they couldn't twist, manipulate, or corrupt. And now that truth is relentlessly chasing them down, and it doesn't miss its mark. Number 5. They sent spells like arrows, aimed with precision and malice. Now, those very arrows are piercing their own throats, causing them unimaginable pain and suffering. They thought you were the sacrifice, the one to be offered up to appease their dark desires. Turns out they were unwittingly offering themselves, becoming the very thing they sought to destroy. You can't summon darkness to swallow the light and expect it to remain loyal to your cause. Every curse they cast in secret, shrouded in shadows, was essentially a receipt printed in public, a testament to their wickedness for all to see. They tried to bankrupt your soul, believing they could drain your essence and leave you hollow. But they ultimately paid for it with interest in blood and silence, a debt far greater than they could have ever imagined. Let's break this wide open and examine it in its entirety, chosen one. They weren't simply playing with candles and chants, engaging in harmless rituals. They were actively trafficking in spiritual warfare, dealing in forces they couldn't possibly comprehend. And you were the bullseye, the intended target of their attacks. But what they failed to realize was both simple and fatal to their plans. The weapons they employed in this spiritual war invariably charge interest, demanding a heavy price from their wielders. Those curses they so casually cast weren't free. They came with a significant cost. The rituals they performed to build energy drains were meticulously metered, quantifying the exact debt they were accumulating. Every time they whispered your name into the darkness, invoking malevolent forces, they were unwittingly handing over a piece of themselves, sacrificing their own well-being. And the worst part of it all is that it didn't even work. Imagine someone taking out a massive loan in your name, fraudulently believing they'll walk away rich and unscathed, only to discover that the account is spiritually protected, guarded by forces beyond their comprehension. Not only is the transaction immediately denied, but now they're burdened with the overwhelming debt, a consequence of their deceitful actions. That's precisely what just transpired in this situation. They launched attack after attack, layering you with their envy, their hate, their twisted prayers, hoping to break your spirit. And none of it landed. Why? Because you weren't just covered by a simple shield. You were entirely out of their range, existing beyond their grasp. You didn't need to actively block them or defend yourself. They missed because you inhabit a realm they simply can't access, a higher plane of existence beyond their limited understanding. They foolishly attempted to curse a frequency that doesn't bend to manipulation, a spiritual vibration that resonates with truth and integrity. And in doing so, they inadvertently triggered the one outcome they never prepared for: destruction by their own hand, a self-inflicted wound that would ultimately lead to their demise. Here's a profound truth they never grasped in their secretive little gatherings, in their clandestine covens. Curses invariably return home, often hungrier and more potent than when they were initially sent. They don't simply vanish into thin air. They orbit around the intended target, circling like spiritual vultures, patiently waiting for an opportunity to strike. And if they don't find a suitable match in you, if they can't penetrate your defenses, they inevitably turn on the sender, the one who initiated the dark magic. This isn't divine revenge, a vengeful act orchestrated by a higher power. It's simply the immutable law of cause and effect, the natural consequence of dabbling in dark energies. That's precisely why the sicker they feel, the quieter they become, retreating into themselves. Why they've started aging at an accelerated rate, their vitality inexplicably draining away. Why their relationships are inexplicably rotting from the inside out, crumbling under the weight of negativity. Why their homes feel perpetually cold and unwelcoming, no matter how much sage they burn in an attempt to cleanse the space. And the energy they so carelessly summoned, it's not impressed by their failed missions. The spirits they invoked, the entities they bargained with, don't care that you were too strong, that you proved to be an insurmountable obstacle. All they know is that the assignment failed, that their objectives were not met. And failure doesn't void the agreement. It automatically activates the penalty clause, demanding a steep price for their incompetence. They foolishly thought candles and jars would do the trick, that they could easily bury your name, bind your energy, and burn you down from a safe distance, hidden in the shadows. But all they managed to do was ignite their own collapse, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to their ultimate undoing. Because you, chosen one, weren't just immune to their attacks. You were radioactive to their darkness, emitting an energy that repelled their negativity. Their curses bounced back with incredible force, not just rejected but weaponized, transformed into a force that would be used against them. Imagine lighting a fuse with the intention of burning someone's house down, only to discover that the flame inexplicably winds its way back to your own gas line, igniting an explosion that destroys everything you hold dear. That's precisely what happened in this scenario. And now, piece by piece, their lives are unraveling before their very eyes. Their minds are restless, plagued by anxiety and unease. Their financial resources are cursed, seemingly disappearing no matter how hard they try to hold on to them. Their families are fracturing, torn apart by conflict and resentment. Why? Because those curses didn't simply disappear into the ether. They converted, transforming into something even more potent and dangerous. Every ounce of negative energy they sent your way became a form of currency, a spiritual payment for their misdeeds. And now it's being relentlessly spent against them, accumulating interest with each passing day. These dark energies don't desire empty gestures like flowers and tears. They don't want insincere apologies offered without genuine remorse. They demand repayment, a debt that must be settled in full. And repayment invariably comes in the form of bloodlines, legacies, and sanity, impacting not just the individual but their entire lineage. You see it, don't you? The ones who once stalked you spiritually, relentlessly pursuing you with their dark intentions, are now being relentlessly stalked by everything they summoned, haunted by the very forces they sought to control. They're increasingly paranoid, plagued by illness, consumed by confusion, desperately searching for a way out of contracts they signed in ignorance and pride, foolishly believing they could manipulate the forces they were dealing with. But the doors they opened, the pathways to darkness they created, don't simply close just because they're suddenly scared and remorseful. They recklessly tore the veil between worlds, allowing something through, and that something is undeniably hungry, demanding its due. And here's the brutal truth, the harsh reality they must now face. They're not being punished simply because they failed to destroy you. They're being punished because they dared to try, because they arrogantly believed they had the right to interfere with your destiny. You weren't just difficult to curse. You were the wrong address entirely, an unintended recipient of their misplaced malice. The mail got returned to sender, marked undeliverable. But it came back carrying fire, ignited by the very forces they sought to control. They dismantled themselves while desperately trying to dismantle you, foolishly believing they were powerful, that they had complete control over the situation. But now their own lives are unraveling slowly, painfully, and publicly, exposed for all to see. Not because you hexed them, not because you wish them harm, but because unearned malice, unjustified hatred, always turns on its master, eventually consuming them from the inside out. So, let them frantically Google how to reverse a curse, desperately seeking a way out of their predicament. Let them light their panic candles, hoping to appease the forces they've angered. Let them chant for peace, seeking solace in their rituals. It's far too late. The spirits they so carelessly courted don't forget failure, and they're certainly not merciful, offering no forgiveness for incompetence. Chosen one, remember this profound truth. You didn't win because you fought harder, because you possessed superior strength. You won because you are the weapon, the embodiment of truth and light. And the battlefield is now littered with the devastating consequences of daring to aim darkness at a light that cannot be dimmed, a flame that burns eternally. Number 6. They thought cosmic law was a joke, a silly superstition to be dismissed with a laugh. Now it's relentlessly kicking down their door, shattering their illusions of control. They mocked divine order as if it were nothing more than folklore, a collection of ancient tales with no relevance to the modern world. Now they're choking on the precision of a system older than time, a system that operates with unwavering accuracy and impartiality. You can't outrun balance when you're the very reason the scale tipped, when your actions caused the imbalance in the first place. What they arrogantly dismissed as superstition is now spelling out their sentence, letter by letter, leaving no room for interpretation. Retribution doesn't need to yell or scream. It simply arrives, measured, cold, and exact, delivering its judgment with unwavering precision. That's not revenge fueled by emotion. That's divine order, the impartial enforcement of cosmic law. Chosen one, they rolled their eyes whenever you spoke of justice beyond the realm of humankind, scoffing at the idea of a higher power. They laughed at spiritual laws as if the universe were some distant, passive force that wouldn't dare bite back, believing they could act with impunity. They thought divine timing was some vague fairy tale idea, a comforting illusion that the weak told themselves to cope with pain and suffering. But now the joke's over, and the punchline is their own unraveling, the complete disintegration of their lives. The very system they so readily dismissed is now the one relentlessly pulling the strings of their downfall, orchestrating their demise with meticulous precision. And it's not loud or dramatic. It doesn't come in a fit of rage. It comes in patterns, subtle yet undeniable, silent, sharp, and absolutely unavoidable. Because divine order isn't a myth or a comforting fantasy. It's the infrastructure of the universe, the invisible machinery that keeps everything balanced, ensuring that cause and effect are always in perfect alignment. It doesn't play favorites, granting preferential treatment to some while punishing others. It doesn't warn twice, offering multiple opportunities for redemption. It simply observes, meticulously recording every action, and then corrects, restoring balance with unwavering precision. Imagine this. They were standing on stolen ground, arrogantly mocking the rising floodwaters as if they posed no threat, laughing at the ominous sky as if the impending storm wasn't real. But now the waters are at their throats, threatening to engulf them entirely, and suddenly energy and balance aren't so funny anymore. They built their world by violating sacred order, manipulating outcomes to their advantage, corrupting purpose for personal gain, tearing into souls like yours with no thought of consequence. They mistakenly thought that silence meant they were safe, that their actions would go unnoticed and unpunished. But silence is precisely how divine order calculates, meticulously weighing every action and determining the appropriate response. Every move they made, every act against truth and alignment, didn't simply vanish into thin air. It triggered something, a sequence of events, a law of the universe, a contract with reality itself that states unequivocally that what is unjustly taken will be returned, and what is broken will be balanced. Not because of divine wrath or vengeful anger, but simply because that's how universal law operates, maintaining equilibrium throughout the cosmos. They arrogantly thought no one was watching, that they could act with impunity and escape the consequences of their actions. But divine order doesn't need to watch. It inherently knows, its awareness woven into the very fabric of reality. It patiently waits, allowing events to unfold according to their natural course. And when the time is right, it moves with a quiet efficiency that leaves no room for escape, no possibility of evasion. Not one lie, not one ritual, not one act of betrayal has been missed. Every transgression has been meticulously recorded and will be accounted for. Now the correction has begun, the process of restoring balance to the universe. Doors are closing without explanation. Opportunities they once clung to are vanishing in the wind, and their name carries no weight in places they once ruled, their influence inexplicably waning. Their protection is gone. The shield that once surrounded them has evaporated, and their favor has vanished, leaving them vulnerable and exposed. Because this isn't coincidence or random chance. It's correction, the deliberate act of restoring balance. This isn't some petty revenge story fueled by personal animosity. You didn't wish this upon them. You didn't even consciously ask for justice. But your survival demanded it, triggering the natural laws of the universe. Your alignment with truth and light exposed the imbalance they tried to create, setting in motion the forces of correction. And now the scales are snapping back with relentless force, restoring equilibrium to the cosmos. And the universe isn't negotiating, offering no compromises or deals. They can't chant their way out of this, reciting incantations in a desperate attempt to alter their fate. They can't buy it off with offerings or bribes, attempting to appease the forces they've angered. They can't bury it under distractions, hoping to divert attention from their misdeeds. This is divine retribution, measured exactly to the weight of their actions and the arrogance with which they committed them, a perfect reflection of their choices. Because they didn't just do harm. They persisted in their actions, continuing their destructive behavior despite repeated warnings. They were given signs, subtle indicators to change course, small breakdowns in their plans, quiet whispers urging them to reconsider their path. But instead of heeding these warnings, they stubbornly doubled down, recklessly continuing their destructive course. They arrogantly thought they were untouchable, immune to the consequences of their actions. And when people mock justice, real justice, they inevitably end up answering to it in full, facing the full weight of their transgressions. Chosen one, you don't have to lift a hand, expending your energy on seeking revenge. You don't have to gloat or revel in their misfortune, taking pleasure in their suffering. What's happening now is the natural unfolding of what was always destined to happen, the inevitable consequence of their choices. Truth always comes collecting, demanding accountability for past actions. And when it does, it doesn't arrive empty-handed. It brings the full weight of everything they thought they got away with, all the misdeeds they believed would go unpunished. Divine order isn't soft or sentimental. It isn't poetic or romantic. It's precise, operating with unwavering accuracy and impartiality. And now it's enforcing consequences with the sharpness of a blade and the calmness of a clock ticking down, methodically marking the passage of time. No emotion, no warning, just the full collapse of everything they built on injustice, the complete disintegration of their ill-gotten gains. They laughed, mocking the idea of divine justice. Now they're losing everything, their lives crumbling around them. And no one is coming to save them, offering assistance or intervention, because the system they laughed at, the divine order they ridiculed, was real the whole time, and now it's here, delivering its unwavering judgment. Number 7. They tried to shatter you, to break your spirit and destroy your essence. But you were the mirror that shattered them, reflecting their own darkness back onto themselves, forcing them to confront the truth they desperately tried to avoid. They didn't fear you as an individual. They feared what they saw in themselves every time you stood unbroken, a constant reminder of their own flaws and imperfections. You didn't haunt them with curses or dark magic. You haunted them with clarity, with the unwavering light of truth. Light doesn't need to actively attack darkness to expose its true nature. It simply exists, radiating its brilliance, and in doing so, it reveals the shadows for what they are, exposing their distortions and deceptions. They couldn't destroy the mirror that you represented, couldn't shatter your reflection of truth. So now they're choking on the reflection, suffocating under the weight of their own self-awareness. They didn't just want to harm you physically or emotionally. They wanted to erase what you represented, to eliminate the very essence of your being. You didn't fit the mold, the predefined expectations they had for you. You didn't play the role they assigned to you, refusing to conform to their expectations. And you didn't respond to their darkness the way others did, refusing to be drawn into their negativity. That alone was terrifying to them, disrupting their carefully constructed worldview. You weren't just a person in their eyes. They saw you as a walking contradiction to the choices they made, a living embodiment of everything they had sacrificed in their pursuit of power. Every time you stood still in truth, unwavering in your integrity, they were forced to confront the lie they were living, the facade they desperately tried to maintain. You were a mirror, not a smooth, flattering kind that enhanced their image, but a brutal, honest one that revealed the cracks in their soul, the imperfections they had spent years carefully covering up. And that's precisely why they hated you with such intensity. Because when you entered the room, their mask started to slide, their carefully constructed persona began to crumble. Their confidence became unstable, shaken by your unwavering presence. Their excuses stopped working, no longer able to justify their actions. You didn't need to say much. You didn't have to engage in lengthy arguments or heated debates. Your energy said it all, radiating truth and integrity, exposing their deceptions. They tried to smear you, attempting to tarnish your reputation. They tried to label you, assigning you derogatory terms to diminish your worth. They tried to manipulate your image, twisting your words and actions so others wouldn't see the reflection you carried, the truth you embodied. They wanted to distort your light, to corrupt your essence until it looked like darkness, justifying their own actions. But you didn't break under the pressure. You didn't fold, succumbing to their manipulations. You didn't dim your light to make them comfortable, refusing to compromise your integrity. And in doing that, you dismantled their entire illusion, exposing their deceptions for all to see. Now they're haunted, not by you directly, but by what you forced them to see, by the reflection of their own darkness. They can't unsee it, can't unfeel it, can't erase the truth that has been revealed. The guilt is creeping in, slowly consuming them from the inside out. The restlessness is growing, preventing them from finding peace or contentment. Their silence is screaming, filled with unspoken regrets and unacknowledged truths. Not because you did anything directly to them, inflicting harm or seeking revenge, but because you refused to become like them, refusing to compromise your integrity. You stood still while their lies ran wild, attempting to distort reality. And still you remained unchanged, unwavering in your truth. That's the real haunting, the true source of their torment. Not a curse or a punishment inflicted upon them, but the unavoidable truth that has been revealed. Unavoidable, sharp, honest truth. You were the reflection they prayed never to face, the embodiment of everything they tried to suppress. And now it's staring back at them from the inside out, a constant reminder of their own failures. They didn't destroy you, chosen one. They destroyed their own illusion, shattering their carefully constructed facade in a futile attempt to silence your reflection. Number 8. They wanted you erased, completely obliterated from existence. But your survival lit the match that's burning their empire down, igniting a chain of events that will lead to their ultimate downfall. They didn't just fail to break you, to diminish your spirit. They activated a system of justice that never forgets, a cosmic force that ensures accountability for every action. You weren't just difficult to destroy. You were the alarm they never meant to trigger, the catalyst that set in motion the forces of divine retribution. When light survives a direct hit, when it withstands an all-out assault, it doesn't just passively glow. It detonates every lie built around it, shattering the illusions and exposing the deceptions. Your survival wasn't just a silent act of defiance. It was a siren heard across every realm, alerting all beings to the injustice that had been perpetrated. It echoed through every dimension they thought protected them, shattering their sense of security. Chosen one, you weren't supposed to make it. You weren't meant to survive their attacks. They meticulously planned every move like a calculated chessboard strategy, orchestrating their schemes from the shadows, stacking betrayal upon betrayal, weaving lies upon lies, engaging in energetic warfare, and isolating you from support like weapons aimed at your heart. They were confident, cocky, certain that by the time they were done, you'd be nothing but a shattered memory, a faint echo of your former self. They didn't just want you gone. They wanted you erased from existence, mentally dismantled, spiritually paralyzed, emotionally destroyed, leaving you a mere shell of your former self. But instead, you rose, defying their expectations. You didn't just survive their attacks. You healed, emerging stronger and more resilient than before. You woke up with wounds transformed into wisdom, with scars that became scripture, living evidence of everything they tried to do and everything they failed to do, a testament to your unwavering spirit. And that's where it all flipped, where their plan backfired spectacularly. Because your survival didn't just embarrass them, exposing their incompetence. It exposed them, revealing their true nature to the world. You walking upright, sane, and still in alignment with your purpose sent a message far louder than any curse they cast, shattering their carefully constructed facade. They failed in their mission, and that failure, especially when powered by darkness, always comes at a price. What they didn't know is that the spiritual world doesn't ignore collapse. It actively investigates it, meticulously examining the root causes. And the moment you stood alive and untouchable, defying their attempts to destroy you, the system that once backed them, the forces that once supported their actions, began to fall in on itself, collapsing under the weight of its own corruption. Not because of your rage or your desire for revenge, but because your survival triggered a hit list they never saw coming, targeting them with unwavering precision. The very spirits they played with, the entities they summoned for power and control, those energies they swore allegiance to, now turned against them, demanding results they couldn't deliver. And when the results don't materialize, when their mission collapses around a glowing, rising chosen one, those spirits don't simply forget. They collect, demanding payment for their services. Your healing signed the contract, solidifying the agreement with the forces of justice. Your clarity finalized the order, initiating the process of retribution. Your survival announced the collapse, signaling the beginning of their downfall. Now, every dark oath they took, every ritual they performed, every alliance they sealed under false power is being weighed in the balance, judged by the unwavering laws of the universe. And the universe is enforcing balance, ensuring that every action receives its due consequence. No more delay, no more distractions, no more places to hide. Their time of reckoning has arrived. The moment you remembered your name, reclaiming your identity and purpose, they started forgetting who they were, losing their sense of self. Their structure is crumbling because they never planned for your resurrection, never anticipated your ability to rise from the ashes. They assumed silence meant surrender, interpreting your quiet demeanor as a sign of defeat. But your silence was sacred, a period of introspection and regeneration. It wasn't retreat. It was regeneration, a moment of becoming, a time of profound transformation. And now that you've become, there's no turning back. Your destiny is set in motion. The price tag on their heads is real, a tangible consequence of their actions. Not superstition, not metaphor, but cosmic compensation for what they attempted to destroy, a debt that must be repaid in full. You weren't just a soul to them. You were a contract, an assignment, a trophy they failed to claim, a symbol of their thwarted ambitions. And when darkness loses a trophy, when its attempts at control are thwarted, the backlash is devastating, unleashing a force of retribution. That's why their lives are unraveling now, not randomly or by accident, but in exact proportion to what they did, a precise reflection of their misdeeds. Protection is gone. The shield that once surrounded them has vanished. Favor is crumbling. Their influence and power are waning. Secrets are leaking, exposing their deceptions to the world. And peace is long gone, replaced by anxiety and turmoil. Because when divine law moves, it doesn't tap politely, requesting attention. It storms in, demanding accountability. And what's happening now is not karma as aesthetic, a superficial concept of cause and effect. It's reckoning as consequence, measured, precise, and enforced by forces they no longer control, entities they can no longer manipulate. They're not just haunted by you, by your presence as a reminder of their failure. They're haunted by their own hands, by the actions they took, by every move they made, every lie they whispered, every room they polluted with your name, every act of malice they committed. Because the spirits they thought they could manipulate, the forces they believed they could control are now serving truth, not them. They're now instruments of justice, ensuring that their actions are brought to light. You weren't just hard to destroy, chosen one. You were never destroyable to begin with, possessing an inner strength that defied their attempts. You are evidence, living, walking proof that purpose can't be buried, that darkness can't overwrite destiny, that silence doesn't equal surrender. It signals the shift, the turning of the tide. Now your very breath is a contradiction to everything they stood on, a testament to the futility of their efforts. Your peace is their collapse, exposing the instability of their foundation. Your healing is their exposure, revealing their true nature to the world. Your rise is the loudest defeat they've ever experienced, a crushing blow to their pride. You were the bloodline they couldn't curse, the lineage that defied their dark magic, the assignment they failed to complete, the task that ultimately led to their downfall, the target that turned into a trigger for justice, initiating the forces of divine retribution. They thought their network, their carefully constructed web of influence, would protect them from the consequences of their actions. But that network is snapping thread by thread, unraveling before their very eyes. No more spiritual cover, no more protection from the forces they sought to control. No more delay, The time of reckoning has arrived. The reckoning isn't pending. It's active, unfolding with unwavering precision. You didn't seek revenge, driven by anger or animosity. You became the reason revenge became irrelevant, rendering it unnecessary. Because when balance moves, when the forces of justice are unleashed, revenge isn't needed. Truth does the work, exposing the deceptions and restoring equilibrium. So rise, chosen one, not just in silence and quiet contemplation, but in power, embracing your true potential. Your presence is shifting frequencies, altering the very fabric of reality. Your scars are sacred now, symbols of your resilience and strength. Every ounce of pain you walk through is now power-rooted, transformed into a source of strength and wisdom. You didn't just survive the storm. You are the storm now, a force of nature reshaping the landscape. And if this message resonates deeply within your spirit, touching a chord of truth within you, then don't let it end here. This is more than just a video. It's a movement, a call to action. Hit that like button if you feel your power waking up, acknowledging the strength within you. Subscribe to stay connected to this space, a community built for awakened souls like you, individuals who are ready to embrace their true potential. Drop your story, your truth, or even your questions in the comments below, sharing your experiences with others. And most importantly, share this message with someone who's been hunted, who's been targeted by darkness and needs to be reminded they're rising, that their spirit is unbreakable. This isn't just survival. It's the shift, the transformation of consciousness. And you, chosen one, you are the evidence that divine order is alive, active, and unstoppable, a force that will always prevail.